Yes, this is the panel. Andrew Urquhart hosting. With you. And Eloise, to be fair, we've had some technical issues with getting the panel underway, so apologies for that. And, well, hello to everybody that is watching the panel on social media. It's one of those situations, I think, with when you're live, whatever can go wrong will go wrong. I think the Prime Minister found that out yesterday when she was competing with seagulls during a live television cross. However, we have got to the bottom of what the problem is, and it is great to be a part of the panel. Now, we are broadcasting on Rima and Life FM. That's correct. People who listen to the Morning Wake Up, they can hear us on whichever one of those channels they prefer, right?
Yeah, and not only are we on the radio, we're also live streaming on Facebook. So you can watch this on Rima's Facebook or Life FM's Facebook page, as well as the Life FM YouTube channel.
Now, as people are watching us on those platforms, not just watching, not just sort of lurking in the background, but they can also interact with the panel. They can ask their own questions as well.
Yeah, leave your question in the comments and we'll try and ask those on your behalf.
Well, wonderful to introduce our panellists. Now, guys, sorry to keep you waiting and have you hanging behind the scenes while we sorted out the technical problems. But first on the panel, introducing Kristel van Houte. She is National Coordinator of Arosha in New Zealand. Kristel, kia ora, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Hello. Good morning.
So what is Arosha for the folks at home? What does that mean?
Yeah, Arosha is a faith-based environmental organisation. So we do practical conservation, community-based conservation, education throughout New Zealand.
So tree huggers for Jesus, that's the thing?
That's the one, yeah.
You'd be happy with that. And you can be both. That's an important thing.
Yeah, any tree hugger really, but...
but faith-based is at the core.
Yeah, so our ethos is faith-based Christian. Yeah, we're a Christian organisation.
Also joining us on the programme from Forest and Bird, Ronan Wallace. Ronan, kia ora, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Kia ora, it's great to be here.
Now, you are a youth advocate for Forest and Bird, that's correct?
Yes, I'm part of Forest and Bird Youth, which is Forest and Bird's organisation for people between the ages of 14 and 25. We've existed for a few years now, and it's really cool to be part of that.
Not just old hippies and swan dries and tramping boots, then?
Well, that is a significant part of Forest and Bird, I'm not going to deny that, but that's not the part that I'm here. I'm here for the young hippies. That's who I'm
Young
here
hippies. No, nice to have you represent. And one question before we go any further, are you more of a forest or a bird man? Do you have a preference?
I think I'm going to have to go to the forest just because they're the coolest parts to walk through. I mean, you can see birds in the forest, so I think that encompasses both.
It's a chicken and egg thing. If there wasn't a forest, there wouldn't be a bird. Exactly.
Exactly.
Looking after the environment. And also from the Upper Room Church, Dr. Craig Heillman. Craig, kia ora, thank you very much for joining us on the show. When it comes, I suppose, to particularly the evangelical Christians, they've got a bit of a bad rep at the moment. And some people may be thinking, like I was saying beforehand, can you be an evangelical Christian and also love the planet? Can you be an environmentalist and a Christian? I mean, some people would think evangelical Christians are all a bunch of tin hat wearing flat earthers and climate change deniers, aren't they?
Well, they're supposed to be, but no. I think you've got to be both. I think if you love God and you believe in the message of redemption in Jesus Christ, you're going to care about the planet. I think those two things go together.
This whole issue to do with climate change deniers, do you think, I mean, as a group, open to everybody here, have we moved past this politically, do you think? I mean, not everyone has, but what about here in New Zealand?
I think we probably have. I think it's like a continuum, and I think there are extremes on that continuum. I think for Christians, and I'll just speak on behalf of Christians generally, I think there's no reason not to embrace the creation and the problems that we are creating for the creation as human beings. And obviously our greed and some of the ways that we live and do things is impacting the planet, and that's obvious. I think sometimes that message, though, gets wedded to philosophies, other philosophies, which maybe go deeper into let's change the structure of society itself. Yeah. I think a lot of Christians probably get turned away by that. But I think the basic message about caring for the planet and actually doing things more carefully as a consequence of living on this great planet, with the only one we've got, I think it makes sense for Christians to be completely on board with it.
You can love the planet without being an eco-warrior, although, Kristel, you can be both, as you prove, I suppose.
Christian hippies. That's what I always
say. Eloise, wanting to bring you in on this one as well, because you're a bit of an environmentalist. You recycle, don't you? I mean, that's a big part of who you are, what you do.
Yeah. Actually, though, I think it was quite interesting with that announcement that James Shaw made yesterday that New Zealand listed companies will have to report on climate change risk. But just wondering, is that enough? What else can they be doing for the environment?
Yeah. No, that's a tough one. Everybody's doing the don't pick me for this question.
I can go for it if you like.
Yeah.
Well, I think as an environmentalist, it never feels like enough. But I think there's a reality check that if you want to create change, you want to bring your community alongside with you.
Yeah.
And so, you're going to have your early starters and you're going to have your laggers, and there's going to be people that will always be pushing to do more. And that's great. We need those people. But you got to get people to get alongside. And I think, anything that gets proposed, it's a first step.
Yeah.
It might not happen as quick as we want it to. I think some things need to happen quicker. There's immense pressure in all kinds of ways on the environment, and we need to get people on board.
We've got to go a little bit deeper, though, than just recycling our way out of the apocalypse, right? I mean, plastic bags, it's kind of token, and unless I suppose the industries and the sectors of society that are causing some of the problems take responsibility for that, we're not going to be moving forward. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's, if I can just jump in here, that's when you said, is that enough? Well, no, it's a solid start, but it's not enough yet. There's always going to be further action that's required. We need to protect our planet. That's just, I think everyone here would agree with that. And there's always going to be more that we can do. So acting like what was announced yesterday is enough. Sure, it's a really good start, but we always need to do more, and we always need to keep pushing. And that will require some significant change for certain areas of society, for certain businesses, for certain groups.
Yeah. In terms of taking responsibility, and again, Kristel, bringing you in on this one, I mean, this is the lifestyle for you. You're all about planting trees and killing animals, which seems like an unusual thing to do.
Introduced animals.
Introduced animals, but she does a mean rat trap, I tell you.
You come to my house.
So I suppose taking that action instead of, I suppose, applying what more we can do instead of just blaming the government or the businesses or the farmers or whatever, saying, hey, what can we do?
Yeah. I mean, I think in any sector, like, you'll have people that are already doing amazing stuff. And I think, getting to a point where you can see change starts with ourselves and saying, I'm going to do my bit, and then, move forward from there is really important. So, yeah, we could all do a lot, in our own backyards and our own households. And, when we come back to the point of recycling is kind of at the bottom just before landfill.
Yeah.
You recycle, but if you look up further up the pyramid, it's refuse, reduce, repurpose, fix. There's so many things you can do before recycling even. So, everyone is part of that solution.
Some would say, and I know there's been comments on this, that the best thing to happen for the environment in living memory is COVID-19, which is a bit harsh, but it's accurate, really. What's your thoughts, Ronan?
It's worth keeping in mind that this pandemic, the situation that we're in, has stopped people from driving about us.
Yeah.
It's basically forced us into reducing our carbon emissions and doing things around that. So it has forced us to change how we live. But also it's shown us that when we acknowledge that there's a crisis, when we acknowledge that there's something that we as a society need to band together and stop and fix and not let hurt us, we can do that. So I think for all the good it's done as a reducing carbon emissions temporarily, it's also shown us, hey, we can do this. We just all need to accept the reality of it, that climate change isn't going away, for example. We need to buckle down and do the hard work and deal with it. And it's something that we can do. We've done it before. We're doing it right now. I came to the studio wearing a mask. We're doing it right now. So we all need to sort of do our part and play a role in that.
Because for a long time it was kind of like, but this is too big and too hard. We couldn't change the way in which we do society. We couldn't change international travel or the sort of cars we use. That's just too big a change for society. And yet we've seen in the last few months that society, if motivated sufficiently, can change quite dramatically.
I think it also matters how you motivate people, though. So I think a big part of this is education. So, you think about a society, a complex society like ours, a lot of what goes on is below the level of intellect. I mean, it's just become habit.
Yeah.
So we've habituated people into being consumers. Now we have to habituate them out of being consumers. And that takes, I think I like what you've said, the slow, gentle approach in many ways is the better way to go. But on the other side, we hear, we need to maybe do it a bit more urgently. So it's, it's a bit of a balance. But somewhere the education has to happen. But I think to some degree, the medium's the message here. And I think sometimes the message sounds a bit shrill.
Yeah.
And it comes from elite voices who often don't live up to their own best standards. You follow the Al Gores around the world. They're always flying on private jets and using up lots of fuel and polluting the atmosphere while lecturing the rest of us on what to do about climate change. And there's always a breakdown. Even our dear friend, the little girl from Sweden who sailed around the world, but then they flew all the people that helped to sail, they flew them back home.
Yeah.
And it's sort of, there's always a gap, I think, between the sort of shrill messaging that we get. I think the average person wants to play a role. And I think organisations that are helping to educate across the whole spectrum is going to end up with better results long term for the planet.
And as a pastor, you'd know that actually guilt-tripping people into doing stuff is not a very effective strategy long term,
is it? It worked for the Catholic Church during the Middle Ages, but it's broken down a bit since then.
With COVID, though, I mean, this is definitely a two-sided coin. Yes, it's shown that we can act if motivated well enough. It's also almost literally sucked the oxygen out of the room. And in terms of environmental concerns going into this election, everybody's worried about whether or not they're going to have a job come Christmas and whether or not their grand's going to get sick, less worried about something which is long-term like the environment. Difficult to juggle sort of, I suppose, short-term motivations and long-term strategies, Kristel.
Yeah, I think it's really easy to think of, environmental action or, making the changes we want as a separate issue. And I think when we integrate that thinking, and I could call it green thinking, it's how we do social justice, is how we do environment, how we do look at biodiversity, how we look at our jobs. So when we look at, re-employing people, can they be more sustainable sustainably orientated jobs? There's so many things that we want to achieve in the environmental, sphere that, if we can channel jobs into that, what a great thing that would be. I think it's not about and or. I think it's about how do we integrate that thinking into, the way forward. And I think then we've got some great opportunities in front of us.
And to an extent, there is talk about that. Yes, there's a gaping hole where we used to have a tourism industry. At the same time, when they're looking at people retraining, instead of a barista, perhaps you will be planting trees somewhere in the mountains.
Yeah, and that's, there's so many different sectors that, not just planting trees or killing introduced animals. There's so many things that,
Sorry to tag you like that, by the way, but it is part of what you do.
Okay, I'm happy with it.
Ronan, wanting to I suppose look at the generational aspect, and Craig, you noted this as well with the sort of Greta Thunberg and Chloe Swarbrick yelling, "Okay, boomer." Do you think there is a bit of a generational divide on this one? Is there perhaps a stronger movement or initiative amongst a younger generation?
To put it simply, yes, I think there is. If we look at the facts, it's my generation that's going to have to deal with it, and the generation after me.
Yep.
And I think that, my generation is the one that's been marching in the streets and leaving school so that they can march in the streets and say, hey, this is real, please deal with it. My generation is the one that's been looking at our current leaders not doing enough, not responding to this in a way that's appropriate. And we've gotten together and say, hey, this isn't good enough. We need to deal with it. We need to come together and deal with it. You guys need to deal with it, because you haven't been. And so that's what we've been doing. So I think there is a generational divide. However, I will say it would be nice if there wasn't. It would be nice if the current people in power, if the current leaders, if the older generations would look at this and say, okay, yeah, we need to protect the young people, the future. We need to protect this for them as well.
Can we politicise this, though? Because it's one thing to bunk off school and wave a placard. I remember doing that when the American nuclear ships were coming in, and it was a great day off school for me. However, do you think that there's also the motivation for young people to say, yes, I care about this enough to bother turning up and going to a polling booth on election day?
Yeah, that's what Forest and Bird Youth has been spending the last few months doing. Part of Forest and Bird's campaigns this year is encouraging people to, as it says on my snazzy T-shirt, to vote for nature and to get out there and actually participate and have your voice heard and make sure that every party has good environmental policies.
Yeah.
So we have been trying to encourage young people to vote. Now, it is worth considering that if we look at the numbers, not quite happening as much as it should be, which is why I encourage any young people who are listening to please enroll to vote, and when you do vote, vote for nature. I think it's very important that everyone comes together and says, hey, voting is important. Young people do this, and young people do care about these things, even if it is just an excuse to skip school. They still went to the protest and learnt about this thing. I think it's important that we do come together, get them to enrol to vote, and get them to vote for nature.
Part of the problem here, and Craig, I'd love to get your comments on this, caring for the environment is a multi-generational long-term strategy. Political strategy is whether or not we're going to get elected back in 4 weeks from now.
Yeah.
Actually, having a long-term strategy sitting within a short-term political focus, they don't quite overlap, do they?
They probably don't gel. And I think, one of the issues, and I go back to what I said before, you have to change people's habits over the long run. And so that is a long intergenerational process. One generation hands habits to the next. I am not convinced that operating on the basis of climate of fear, sorry to use that word climate, but I don't think fear. I think fear is a great short-term motivator. I don't think people can live there forever. And I do worry that some of the messaging that comes through in our cultural context frightens the living daylights out of young people. It isn't helping them. Hope is a far better motivator over the long run, and I think we have to have a more hopeful picture, motivating our actions today about what kind of a planet do we want to live upon, and that will motivate the actions that we follow today. But on the other side, to say, well, we're voting for nature, if that simply means we're just voting for the Green Party, the problem for me as an older voter, if you like, and I totally understand where you're coming from, and I didn't hear you say that, by the way, but so I'm not putting words in your mouth, okay? But I do think that the danger would be that we simply say, well, it's the planet and nothing else. And the trouble is people have to work They have to live. They have to pay their bills. You've got all these other commitments, like people have mortgages. Those can't be turned off like we turn off the tap.
Yeah.
Those are 25-year commitments that people make. And, so change is almost glacial in some ways. And it's great to have people pushing very hard, but they're going to run up against obstacles. And that's, I think, the way a healthy society is going to work in the end. Is there's going to be a bit of push and pull and a bit of balance.
I mean, different people motivated by different things. That's part of a participatory democracy. Different
Yeah.
people will be, some will be motivated by the environment, some by the economy, some by other things. Yeah.
Would I be able to just jump in there and just respond quickly?
Absolutely.
So, Forest and Bird is a non-partisan organisation. I
Yep.
think our members have their own political views. If you're watching live, you can probably tell from my hair which general side of the argument I fall on.
Yeah.
But we are, as an organisation, non-partisan, and part of encouraging people to vote for nature is encouraging all of the parties to step up and have decent environmental policies. So there may be particular policies that we like from individual parties. For example, the policy that the Green Party announced just recently with the their farm policy. That is a strong policy, and we would encourage every single party in New Zealand to adopt a similar policy so that no matter who you're voting for, you can vote for nature.
Because essentially, if you've got one political party that's the environmentalists and the others who don't care about the environment, then, I mean, as we're talking the cycle of politics, we're not going to have a long-term
And
strategy,
that goes
right?
to my point, which is you're looking for long-term incremental change. And I agree with you that the way to get that is to have everybody on board, even if they're at different parts of that continuum. But you're still making progress because everybody's somewhat on board. So I think all those voices get heard in the political process.
This morning, talking about the environment and whether or not that is something which will motivate you as we go to the polls this election. After a bit of a rocky start technically to the panel, we're up and going. Eloise, we're streaming live. There's people watching us online?
Yes, we actually have a few questions that we might take a look at when we come back.
Yeah.
And if you do have any questions, make sure you leave your comment on the live videos on Facebook, on Reema's Facebook and Life FM's Facebook page.
Yeah, do check that out, and you'll be able to see the room as well. Now, for people that are watching the live stream, you'll be able to watch us continue to discuss things behind the scenes, so make sure you check that out. But for the rest of you listening on the radio, we'll be back in just a moment. Okay, hello to everybody watching on social media. Yes, this is us in the studio, and apologies again, slightly rocky start to our panel. Some technical things. I blame the old guy. That would be me, right, Eloise?
Yeah, I should have had a look at it before.
Well, yeah,
It
I
was just
could
something little.
blame you, but no, I won't do that. Maybe I'm doing it internally. And hey, guys, thank you for your patience. We got there in the end. We just did longer breaks because we had less ad breaks, right? We got those out of the way first.
Cool.
You good with that?
Yeah.
All good.
Yeah.
That's good.
And after the break, I reckon we jump into the whole politics thing, you know, what and the political party thing, because I think we set that up nicely. So we'll unpack that a little bit. I mean, for example, so what do you do in the polling booth if you want cleaner rivers but you don't smoke weed? I mean, how do you?
I was wondering if you were going to go there.
How do we sieve through that? Exactly. Yeah, I'm not accusing you of anything. I mean, that's a personal thing for you. Don't want to create any problems. And yeah, again, with the people watching on Facebook and YouTube at the moment. That's right, eh?
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
So she's not confessing to anything. Just wanting to make that clear. And Forest and Bird isn't say vote Green, but you can if you like. Just vote. Just vote.
Vote for nature, whoever that might be.
Exactly.
And you did a great job of explaining. I heard you very well.
Yeah.
If you vote
You did a great
national,
job.
you're not voting for nature.
Well, we may unpack that in just a moment. Yeah.
Well, Forest and Bird Youth has some scorecards that'll have our
We are
opinion
back
on
into it now.
There is Green Nationals.
You are with the panel on Rema and on Life FM, and also streaming. For people that are just listening to the radio, they missed a bit of a treat what was happening in the studio during that ad break, Eloise. It was quite good, wasn't it?
Yeah, we are live streaming
Some
on
confessions.
Life FM and Reema's Facebook pages, so you can ask any questions on there, and we already have a few.
Yep.
This question is, I guess, coming from a farmer. So does anyone on the panel believe that regenerative agriculture can have positive impact on the climate change? And also, as a farmer, what do you think I can do to do my part that hasn't already been done, and what can the government do more of?
Kristel, that sounds like a question for you, I think.
I used to be a farmer.
Well, look at that.
Yeah, there you go. Ex-dairy farmer. So, yeah. So, I mean, shall we break down the question?
Yeah.
So what was the first thing? What can I do that isn't already being done? Or do you believe in regenerative farming? What was
Yeah.
it?
So regenerative agriculture, do you think that can have a positive impact on climate change?
Definitely, yeah. In short.
So what? I mean, I don't know about you, Craig. I've no idea what regenerative farming is.
I was trying to guess as to what it was, but I am not a farmer, so I have no idea.
Come on, for us townies, unpack it a bit more if you
So
could.
basically re-looking at how, all the processes on a farm and how you can kind of rebuild the soil and, do your animals well and, not use as many of the chemicals and everything that are currently being used.
Because I think there's another false dichotomy between, okay, there's the dairy farmers and then there's the environmentalists and they all hate each other. But actually, people that work the land, they are the people who have a strong vested interest in caring for their environment because their livelihood depends on it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, most of the farmers I know, hugely passionate about the land. But like anywhere, there's different views on how you treat the land. And I guess the regenerative approach is kind of like the word says, it's bringing back the soils. It's building them up. And I think what especially the mass kind of agricultural systems are doing now is that they load it up with fertilizer and take what it needs, and it doesn't build the soil, so it tends to not encourage the microbes and this, all the insects and everything else that kind of need to be there. It's monoculture. It's not, it's not diverse. So over time, you're reducing the quality of the soil and everything that you're farming.
So
on
again,
it.
it's a short term rather than a long term strategy.
It's a short term. Yeah.
No, very good. Hey, another question, Eloise?
Yes, we had a question about 1080.
Gosh.
Jessica has said, do you encourage people to vote for a party that intends to ban 1080 as one of their policies?
No. To put it simply, that would be my answer. So 1080 is, when you look at the facts, it's the most useful, it's the most efficient way to get rid of these pest animals, and damage to the native animals that's greatly overstated. There's a lot of, frankly, lies and urban legends about it that just aren't true. And there's a lot of disinformation. There's a disinformation campaign. If you're going to vote for a party, I know there are a few that aren't in favour of 1080, write to them, let them know, hey, I support you in general. This is an unacceptable policy that you have. If you want to represent me, you'll have to change that. That's something that you can do and you should do as a voter. You want your party to represent you. If that's an issue you disagree with them on, let them know. And if that's something they're sticking by, don't vote for them. That would be my simple advice without telling you who to vote for.
Yeah, exactly. And I think let's jump into the politics side of things. Let's start with a few generalisations. National Party, farmers and business owners. There we go. Labour, it's the working poor. For New Zealand First, I think that's mostly old people, Craig, just letting you know. And if you care for the environment, it's party vote Green. Now, these, of course, are broad brushstroke generalisations. And what you were talking about before, Ronan, is actually there's environmental policy, good, bad and ugly, across the political spectrum.
Yeah, exactly. Or rather, there should be good environmental policy across the political spectrum. Whether you're a small business owner who's always voted National and you're planning to vote National this election, you should be able to hold them to account and say, hey, your environmental policies aren't good enough, you need to do more. And you can write to your local candidates, write to your local MPs and tell them, hey, I want you to do more, and let them know and have your voice heard and get them to change their policies if that's possible. If enough people do it, they will do it. They want your votes. So
I mean, it's a very good point as well, because, okay, yes, we're building up to the election, but in terms of political engagement with a participatory democracy, that doesn't start and end on election day. If we're wanting to influence the outcomes of the society in which we live, that's a every day of the year type of thing. I mean, you're living the dream on that one, Kristel.
What?
Well, in terms of engaging with policy and doing something about the environment, this you're all in on this one.
Yeah. Well, probably a little bit less on the policy side. It's a huge thing, but probably not something that we've put as much, time into. But it's on the ground action. That's kind of where it happens. I mean, you need the people at the top, but I think that groundswell, the organic kind of groundswell of what people want and how they live is so important, and it's an absolute privilege to work at that level. And
I mean, when it comes down to it, and total respect to our politicians, but they want to represent the people. They want to have more people voting for them than voted for the other guy. So if we, the people, can let them know what's important to us, that's going to influence policies and outcomes, yeah?
Yeah, and that's the point of democracy, isn't it? To get your voice heard. It's not always easy, and not always easy to find a party that represents the package of views that you're passionate about.
Yeah, and can we unpack that a little bit? Because, I mean, you made a really good point on this one, Ronan, that you're not going to get everything you want in one package. For example, you want to clean up the rivers, but you don't like people that smoke weed. I mean, you need to, I suppose, recognise that no political party is going to tick all of your boxes, but actually making an informed decision about the best way of doing that. Any advice on that, Craig?
Oh, I'm more of a, recognise you're not going to get, you're not, as a Christian voter, I would say, you vote, wherever you're voting, you recognise you're not going to get necessarily a lot of what you might be super passionate about, but it's the key issues for you. So find the key issues, find the party that represents those things well, and then vote for them. But you'll have to take the good, the bad, and the ugly, because they are not going to represent all of your views, and nor should they, because to get a political party into power, it requires a cabal of voters who may have very different. Look at America. You've got the gun lobby and the religious right, coming together to vote in one direction. It's there are a whole pile of things going on to create a voting bloc, and politicians know how to milk this stuff and advertise to it, and they see us as consumers consuming their messages, and so that's the way it's tailored. So I think don't be disappointed when they don't do exactly what you thought they might do, and don't be disappointed when they let you down and they didn't do what they promised they would do. Although maybe don't vote for them again. Hold them accountable.
Yeah,
But they're supposed to be representing us, and that's what a representative democracy is about. But half the time, I suspect you'd feel you're probably not well represented.
It's certainly the case, and to be fair, there's no perfect system, there's no perfect political party, there's no perfect voters.
What did Winston Churchill say? Democracy's the
worst form of all government, apart from all the
rest.
others. Yeah, exactly. But I suppose in this particular environment, if this is something which you are passionate about, this is how you can have your say, and this is how you can perhaps communicate your views. Now, we were talking about some of the misinformation on social media, Ronan. Social media. Now, we're broadcasting, of course, on various social media platforms, so we're not against it per se. It can be a bit of a trap, but it can be a great way of influencing society and getting good ideas out there and having some robust debate.
Yeah, exactly. As a young person, I spent a fair bit of time on social media, like Forest and Bird Youth on Facebook. Shameless plug right there.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
But, I think, there's a lot of disinformation and negatives, and a lot of negative stuff I could say about Facebook in particular, but if you go online, you can find groups for environmentalists in New Zealand, you can find pages for environmental organisations, and you can follow what they do and see when they have events in your area, see when they're doing setting traps or doing anything like that in your area, and you can go out and help them, and it's fun. You feel cool because you're actually helping the planet instead of just sitting around thinking it would be cool to help the planet. It's a really productive way to get something done, and social media is super helpful at sharing that around. Like us on Facebook.
Yeah, no, very good indeed. And hey, feel free if you guys want to plug your favourite social media outlet while you're here.
As a young person, I would like to plug.
I suppose there's also the challenge of, political parties who overpromise and then have no risk of ever having to deliver on this one. And I think I can do this without naming the party, but I think you'll know who I mean. There's a billboard in my area, and the slogan on the billboard is "Let's tackle climate change," which sounds like a good, simplistic slogan, but actually it's more complicated than that. It's not very realistic to say, hey, vote for me and I'll make all of your wildest dreams come true and global warming will stop. For particularly some of the smaller parties that aren't likely to have a significant influence in Parliament, they can promise what they like, yeah?
Yeah, no, I think that's Look, my best advice to everyone is go and find a person of character and vote for them.
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate in my area that my local MP is a guy called Simon O'Connor. Just a fantastic man of character. I trust what he says. I think he stands by what he says and means. And so I think we're very fortunate where I am. But, find a person that you believe, it's not always the party. Sometimes it's just the person. Because they're going to have some influence within Parliament. So find a person of character that you think would actually uphold their word and would actually hold their political party accountable and go for it.
Is it naive, though, to presume that, some people say that it's arrogance for us to say that we were the causes of climate change, but we won't get into that. But perhaps is it naive to say that we can stop it, that we, the people, if we all work really hard together, can push against these huge forces of human nature? I mean, I'm not saying, therefore, it's in the too hard basket, we should do nothing. But is there perhaps a naivety that we can use politics to affect change which can have a positive influence on the environment?
If I can jump in there?
Yep.
No, I wouldn't say it's naive. For someone who this is going to affect my life in the future, no, it's not naive to think we can do something about it. What's naive is to think it's okay to just sit around and do nothing. It's we need to actually do something if we want to solve this problem, and that requires action. And just saying we're going to tackle climate change obviously isn't a solution, but I think if we look at certain parties' policies, they're a lot stronger than certain other parties' policies. So we need to... So no, it's not naive to think that we can reduce climate change and we can protect our future and protect the future generations and protect our planet as long as we actually do something. It's naive to think we can put it off another 3 years to the next election because this is just a COVID election and we can wait another 3 years and nothing will happen. That's where it gets into that naive territory.
Just on that COVID thing, actually, because I know for a lot of people, they're doing it really tough at the moment. There are small business owners, there are people who have been recently made unemployed. They don't know what Christmas is going to look like. And for some people, again, there's this dichotomy, and I'd love for each of you to give your viewpoint on this, the trade-off between caring for the environment and supporting the economy. What's your thoughts on that? Kristel, if we could start with you, the balance of economic development and also caring for the planet.
Yeah. I mean, I think when you care for the environment, you're caring for people. The two aren't disconnected, they're interconnected. So when you don't have healthy environment, you don't have healthy people. I think there's some great examples. I was in Queenstown not so long ago, and some of the companies there that weren't able to operate have got involved in conservation work and got their staff involved so they keep them going. But that's a short-term solution. But I think there's also a bit of a mindset that, if you want a good economy, you can't do good environment. And I think we need to rethink what a good economy is. A healthy economy has good environmental justice and policies and ways forward that, are probably even beyond some people's imagination right now. So people kind of think, it's going to cost more, or people are going to lose jobs. But rather than thinking of it as mutually exclusive, it's actually something that we can integrate together, and there's huge opportunity there to do both. So I get a bit frustrated when we talk about the economy as something separate rather than something that we can combine and do well together. Green policies are also about economics. It's also about jobs, and it's about how we want to live our future.
Craig, any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm probably with both these guys on that. I agree with Ronan that none of this is naive. I mean, the best form of change would come from the grassroots. And what Kristel's saying is right too. I mean, you're going to open up new markets if the average person conducts their life in a different way. It's just inevitable because the market will meet where people are at, and there'll be new holes that open up. So my own view on that would be the more you can educate grassroots people like me to actually just behave better in regards to the planet and the way we do things, the more impact you're going to have. And I'm sick and tired of the Western approach of everything's top down, and we rely too much on that. We look at this COVID crisis, it's experts speaking all the time, and yet a lot of what goes on does not actually add up. People are starting to kind of pull away at the seams of this thing and realise, look, did we really require all the actions we've taken? But the experts told us millions of people were going to die if we didn't. And that's been the experience of every country around the world. And so I think we need to trust a little less in the experts sometimes and actually just go back to, I can make a difference myself.
Yeah.
If my family produces less rubbish and looks after, by the way, I'm sorry, I'm killing possums in my backyard. And they're my little countrymen. And when I kill one, I always go, "What are you doing here? You've fallen into my trap.
Well,
You're in the wrong
you're
country."
talking to somebody who's made a career out
Out
of
of
getting rid
giving
of
people like
unwanted
me traps,
Australians.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
But I always feel I'm polluting the planet when I put the little fella in the rubbish bin as well, and he's
Yeah.
sort of,
Oh no, put them in the ground.
But I think we all individually have to take some responsibility. So I'm with Ronan on that one, and I'm not waiting for the experts. I think we have to. Average everyday people have to lead the charge if they want change.
Yeah. Ronan?
If I could just jump in there quickly and say, we should listen to experts just as a rule. That's some good advice.
He and I part company.
Well,
Also.
Yeah.
That's because they frightened you to death, you see. That's why you're listening to them. They've terrified you.
Yeah, I'm not a scientist myself, but I tend to listen to people who are. That's pretty much my rule there.
Yeah.
But just to jump on the topic of sort of economy versus the environment, that is a false dichotomy. And because, people are part of nature. People are part of the environment. If we look after the environment, we're looking after people. There's obviously many, many benefits from having a good environment, especially in a country like New Zealand, where so much of our tourism comes from being a beautiful country that people come to look at because we've got this amazing environment. There's tourism benefits as well as like mental health benefits and everything like that if we look after our environment. But it's also worth considering that for years we've been told that there's the balance between the environment and jobs and the economy, except for years the environment has been getting worse and the economy has been getting better. So maybe when we're saying that there's this balance and we need to keep it balanced, we haven't actually been balancing it for years. That's been something that we've been told by the powerful rich people in the economy, and then
Well,
we've
they're
been...
only experts, aren't they?
Well,
No, I'm just going to have to bring out my flat Earth credentials. And,
no, exactly. I thought you were.
I just do not subscribe any longer. We've all been told, unfortunately, too many lies for us to subscribe any longer to the view that there is a cabal of experts running the world that we should all listen to. So I'm afraid I'm parting radical company at this point.
No,
Ronan,
this is.
but I'm tired of that view of the universe, and it hasn't worked out so well for the average person, and I just don't buy it anymore.
Yeah.
I'm afraid I see a series of vested interests.
I would agree there's not a cabal of experts with like a crystal ball and hovering around a circle wearing cloaks or anything. I would agree that that's not a thing. But I think there are experts in topics like COVID-19. And I think if we look at it, New Zealand's had pretty much the best response on Earth.
Unless you lost your job.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now, if we
A lot of countries
if
have
we could bring this, I suppose, back around the opportunity, because with COVID-19, perhaps an opportunity for a reset, perhaps an opportunity for us individually to reset what our priorities are, and you guys may have different priorities in this, but an opportunity to say, okay, this is the way the world was before COVID. Post-COVID, we can change perhaps the way in which we do things. We can change some of the systems and some of the basis of our economy. Yes, it's a crisis, and certainly a lot of people are suffering, but an opportunity in that crisis, do you think, Kristel?
Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, I feel for people that have lost their jobs. I cannot even imagine what that must be like. And I hope that, for those people that are in that situation, that there's a community of people that is surrounding them and supporting them in all kinds of ways, beyond, government subsidies. But, yeah, lots of opportunity to do things better, to reconnect, to find our place in nature, like you're saying. I think there's huge opportunity for communities to grow their own food, reassess how they, treat sewage or treat their waste. Where does their food come from? Like, is there more food that we can produce within New Zealand, and use our own resources and support each other within that? And I think, in a sense, being so dependent on external imports and exports leaves us vulnerable at times like this. I mean, it's a huge topic as to where we go with all that. But, there can be the difference between choosing to plant native trees instead of introduced trees. And the benefits that come out of just making a simple choice between one tree and another are huge. And I think in everything that we do, we can make those decisions. Do we make a slightly better decision for biodiversity, for the environment in general, for climate, whatever you want to call it? Can we make that good decision now, knowing that in the long run that will bring great gains? Or do we make a short-term decision that only leaves destruction and, wasted soil, pine trees chopped down, in the long run? So, and I think for everything that we do, we can do that. And I think if we can see more jobs and environmental outcomes, so that's a great outcome. But I'm sure it's going to take some time to come up with those things, and I hope we can really channel those people that are around and channel their own creativity. There'd be a huge source of knowledge within people that have lost jobs that are doing things differently and re-looking at the way they do business.
No, very, very good indeed. Now, we're just about out of time. Eloise, just wanting to check with you, with the people on social media, any comments or feedback that's coming through those channels?
Someone was asking about human and urban environment issues.
Okay.
And someone else asking about international tourism. Is it bad for the environment?
Gosh, big questions as we're coming down to the close. I mean, we do have this clean, green environment. It's part of our brand. But if we've got foreign tourists coming from who know where and trampling all over our ecology, I mean, is that a trade-off? What's the thoughts there?
It's hard to say because obviously there is the impact of just the plane travel to come to this country and visit that. But it's also worth considering that New Zealand has many, many beautiful places that are kept beautiful and that we're able to keep beautiful because of the tourists that come there, because of the money that they get from people visiting their sites. So it's worth... it's hard to say if
it's a trade-off,
if it's net positive or net loss, but it's worth...
And I think it's certainly something which is worth continuing to be part of our brand. Whatever happens with the tourism industry, is say, hey, there's a lot of things that we're blessed with here in New Zealand, and a big part of that is the environment as well. Was another question there, Eloise?
That was mostly all the questions.
Okay, sorry, I missed some of the details there. We are just a few minutes away from the end of our program, so just an opportunity for final thoughts. Firstly, Craig?
Here it is. Stop buying crap. You'll save China, and you'll probably save yourself in the process. I think we all just need to pitch in and, get involved with organisations like this and listen to Forest and Bird and actually find out for ourselves how we can make a difference and go make a difference ourselves. That's a part of the world you can affect. I can't affect what the UN are doing necessarily. I can't even necessarily affect what they're doing in the beehive from day to day. But I can affect what I do and what my family does, and so we should take responsibility. It's our planet. I have to live here. It's the only one I've got. And I will bury some of these possums I'm catching in the backyard. I'll have holes all over my yard. I caught 5 in 5 days once. I mean, they're everywhere.
Yeah, there's less possums because of the work that you're
we snuck
doing.
them in the past.
Exactly. Kristel, final thoughts from you?
I think I just want to encourage people to, if you haven't already, have your moment maybe this coming weekend and connecting with nature and maybe get some inspiration there for what difference you can make. And could be as simple as using a different product or not buying a product, walking to work or cycling. There's many, many things, or getting involved in an organisation or even making a donation. But, there's so much power in when communities get together and make change. So I would say connect with friends and family and see what you can do. And, spend that time in nature. I think the answers will come.
And let that inspire you as you make your choice in the polling booth coming up in the 17th of October. Ronan, final word from you, sir.
Yeah, I would go on with the election theme and tell you to have a look at the party's policies and read through them and see if you think they're good enough or not. And if you don't think they're good enough, give your local MP a call, give someone a call and let them know that this isn't good enough. And if they don't do more, you won't be voting for them. It's an important election. We need to make sure that we get this right and get this right as quickly as possible.
Well, hey, a fascinating conversation. Certainly appreciate all of your contributions. Kia kaha, kia ora, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks.
Thank you. Well, we got through that unscathed, didn't we?
Yeah, I thought we were going to have a bit of
Wow. No.